What is up, guys, and welcome back to the Life's a Dance podcast. I am your host, Trey Culata. Thank you, as always, for joining me on this crazy journey through demystifying the human mind and this crazy thing we call life. Today, we are talking about learning to love your fear, which at first glance can seem kind of counterintuitive, or it doesn't make sense because it's like, oh my, why would I learn to love my fear? Like, that sounds kind of like not a fun time. But if we can learn to actually turn fear into our friend and our ally and learn to channel it in the right way, we can actually begin to make choices, big life choices in our lives that support a life that we love and create a curated life from a place of empowerment versus lack and worry and resistance. So luckily for you guys, I have kind of mastered this process, and I was able to reverse engineer it and break it down into 5 simple steps that you guys should be able to implement. So by the end of the podcast, you will have all the tools at your disposal to be able to do this, starting today. But before we get into the steps, I just want to take a step back and talk about where fear actually comes from. So fear is something that has been ingrained in us since the Stone Age, right? Since we were cavemen. And we had to protect ourselves from things, immediate physical threats like lions and tigers and bears. Obviously, in the present day, those types of things are not immediate threats. So where does the fear come from? It really comes from our internal world because we become so cerebral through the process of evolution. But if you think back, how many times have you made a decision from a place of fear where it served you in a positive way? If I think back on my life and all the decisions that I ever made coming from a place of fear, the answer to that question for me is no. There's never been a scenario in my life where I made a life choice based out of coming from a place of where I was afraid or fearful that ended up going well for me. 9 times out of 10 blew up in my face. So let's think of some examples of this. For me personally, I think one of the big ones is not continuing to pursue my career in radio and television because my family, my mom specifically, was like, there's no money in that. You need job security, yada, yada, yada. You know, we've all probably been through this at some point or another, where we've had a family member kind of instill the fear in us about some decision that we were trying to make in our lives that was really important to us. And I mean, look at now at things like Spotify and YouTube and, where I'm at right now. People are making millions upon millions of dollars. And had I started this 20 years ago, I can only imagine where I would be at because I was listening to the fear and I gave into that fear and decided I wanted to go into something that had a little more job security. I bailed on the dream. And now 20 years later, I'm circling back around. But, I could have been way ahead of the game had I just not listened to the fear, right? And that's just one example. We can go into the other example of, marrying my ex-husband. I was afraid that I wasn't going to get married in my 30s or have children in my 30s because that's what people from my generation, were supposed to do. And I ended up marrying somebody that was not the right person for me. So, you know what I mean? And those are kind of bigger life decisions, but you see where I'm going with this. So the question then becomes, is there a way to work with our fear and even begin to love our fear? And when we start feeling afraid of something, so that you can turn it into a powerful ally and tool. And the good news is that the answer to this question is yes. So here we go with the steps, because again, I have done this and I have mastered this process to the point where now I get excited when I get afraid. I get excited because I know that the universe is trying to tell me something. And we're going to get into that in a second. So step number 1, you need to become aware. Become acutely aware of every time you feel afraid or worried. And why is this so critical? Well, it's critical to become aware because so many of us, for a lot of us, it's become the default programming. We are worried so often that we can't even recognize when we're in a state of fear or a state of worry because we're just so used to being in that state all the time. And we are trying to unwire thousands upon thousands of years of physical evolution. So just keep that in mind, okay? Becoming aware is the very first step. Step number 2, you need to understand that it's only your brain's and your body's trained physical reaction to change and the unknown. Again, going back to the fact that we are literally trying to unwire thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years of physical, biological evolution. You've got to be patient with yourself, and you have to understand that once you first recognize that you're in a state of worry or fear, you have to take a step back and breathe and say, hey, okay, this is my brain's physical reaction to change, some kind of change that's going on in my life, and or something unknown like the future, some future outcome. So that's step number 2. Step number 3. This is going to sound weird, but you have to thank your fear for showing up. Let's close your eyes, put your hands to your heart, breathe, say, thanks, fear. Thank you for showing up. And you want to know why? Because your fear is there. The universe is sending you a signal, a message that there is something in your life that you need to do, be, or conquer. I'll say that again. Thank the fear for showing up because it is showing you something that you need to do, be, or conquer. And this is the exciting part because leading into step number 4, which is figure out what you need to do, be, or conquer. This is how we face our fears. And I'll give you an example. So a current example. I am in the process of developing a piece of land to build a tiny home, little cabin, right? I have been dabbling in real estate, trying to become this, real estate mogul. And it's taking a lot of trial and error. And I have been working my ass off my entire life to finally get to this point. I've done all the jobs, I've done the saving, I've done read the books and listened to the podcasts and watched the motivational videos and I've tried and I have failed so many things. But my path has led me to here, current day, and I knew nothing, absolutely nothing about developing a piece of land, right? Zilch. So that's a scary proposition because not only do I know nothing, it's expensive. It costs a lot of money to develop a piece of land, even a tiny piece of land for a tiny house. So it's a very scary proposition. But what I have come to know as a fact, like a spiritual fact, is that anytime I am faced with something like that kind of fear about jumping into the unknown, thank God I'm not risk averse, but I think it's because I've done this so many times. I know that is the thing that I have to do. If I am afraid of doing something, that is precisely when I know that I have to pursue it. I have to do it. So I'm doing it. Thanks to my wonderful business partner, which again, I was afraid to even have a business partner because I've been burned in the past. But something inside of me told me, okay, you know what? You need to face this fear because not all partnerships are going to be your past partnerships. You have to be open to the opportunity. And you know what? It has been amazing. It has been amazing. So that's why figuring out what you need to do, be, or conquer is a very critical step. It is the step that helps us turn our fear into our friend and our ally. Okay? And then step number 5, y'all love me for this. Consistency, phantom fifth, repeat, rinse and repeat, baby. 1 through 4, rinse and repeat. And luckily for us, we are going to get a lot of chances and opportunities to get our reps in because how often do we feel the fear creep up in us on either the daily, the weekly, you know what I mean? It's coming up all the time. So good news for you. You're going to have plenty of opportunities to practice these steps and turn that fear into your best fucking friend. Because I promise you, the minute that you have the epiphany like I did, that the fear is the universe trying to show you something, and that you need to rise to the occasion, and you start getting excited, that's when the magic happens, people. That is when the magic absolutely starts to happen, because nobody picks up a bat on the first day and becomes an MLB baseball player, right? You have to practice to get any fucking good at it. So it becomes a process then of falling in love with picking up the bat. So let's learn to fall in love with our fear, guys. If you guys have any questions on this, feel free to leave them in the comments below. If you got anything out of the episode, I'm going to invite you to share it with someone who might also get something out of it, because you never know. You could inspire them and change the trajectory of their life, and they'll thank you for it later. But on that note, I love you all. Until next time, let's dance.